Hey guys, Palsteron here, and today let's talk about the Alch and Ghost strat that I've been farming over the last week or so. So a lot of people saw me chunking through Metamorphs over on twitch.tv/Palsteron, and they were asking what the hell am I doing, what am I farming exactly, how to make use of Metamorph, and what do I kind of combine it with. And this is basically a tried and true strat I do almost every league that has to do with Gilded Metamorph Scarabs. We're going to go more into that in a second. There's also some new additions right here. This is the sort of strategy that I usually do once I have a decked out character where I can actually kill Metamorphs efficiently, kill Essences efficiently, and you can just rush through the map and do them quickly. So the strategy has 4 parts to it, and we're going to go through all of them, and then I'm going to show you a map, how you do it, some caveats at the end, maybe some improvements that I made over time. We're going to talk about Metamorphs, Essences, obviously the Altars, which is a no-brainer in every strat right now, and also Heist. The only interchangeable one here is Heist. We're going to talk about that in a second. I know not everybody likes to sell contracts and that, me included, but there's another big reason to actually run Heist, which is Mr. Huckabee Huckster, which we're going to talk about a little bit later. How do you gear him, etc. Well, let's first knock out the #1 question here. Why not Legion, Expedition, Harvest, Abyss, Blight? Now, a lot of these on the list are very nice to do. I did them myself. Expeditions are very lucrative. Harvest is very lucrative. The reason why it doesn't fit into this strat in particular is we actually want to complete a lot of maps very, very quickly. We want to get as many Metamorphs as possible. We want to get as many free Essences as possible, as many free Smuggler's Caches as possible. If you think about how these effects work, they're per map, which means the more maps you run per hour, the more free stuff you get. So if I would, on top of everything I'm doing here, prolong my map with Harvest, with Expeditions, that would mean I would probably just get like half the Essences, half the Smuggler's Caches, and half the Metamorphs. As well as that, you get more map completions, especially with Baptized by Fire, which turns out to be more invitations, which are worth good money. So let's first start out with Metamorph. Let's knock it out of the park. There's a lot of new additions, which we're going to talk about in a second. A lot of new nodes that help out. Also nodes that help you get them down quicker. But before we lay everything out, I want to quickly talk about the Gilded Metamorph Scarabs. Now, obviously, you get, whenever this is in your map, you get a Metamorph. But there's also double the itemized samples that are dropping. We're going to talk about itemized samples a little bit later. And then also all Metamorph monsters have rewards. Which, if you don't know how that looks like, this is basically it. So whenever you kill a Metamorph monster, like this green thing on a mini-map, you will get one of these, and it can have a reward and it cannot have a reward. Usually, I would say it's like a 1 in 5 to 1 in 6 that one of these has a reward, and otherwise it just drops basically nothing. It's going to be very bad. So the difference between a Gilded, where you can like decide between all the juicy ones and not, this one is not the best examples, right? A lot of the time, you're going to get multiple Catalyst rewards, you sometimes get Scarab rewards, you're going to get multiple map rewards, currency rewards, and those are really going to be summing up over time. Now, the reason we need the Gilded Metamorph is that one of the biggest reasons to run Metamorph is replicated results. You can assemble an additional Metamorph in your maps after the first is dead. Now, even without a Gilded and without all rewards, you could probably assemble one okay Metamorph, but what you would rather have is obviously 2 juiced ones. So we don't use any necessary compasses. I'm using 1, but you don't have to. It doesn't really make that much of a difference, but you will need this 1 Scarab. We're going to talk about other options if you want to make it juicier later. So we can assemble 2 Metamorphs after the first one is dead. We can get a second one, but the rewards that we had from the first ones, like I said, are gone. So we need as many rewards as possible. And just scaling the extra rewards here is not going to make it. That's not enough. We also have Organ Donor, which got actually a little bit changed this patch. Let's talk about it. Now, the first line is the same as on the Gilded Metamorph Scarab. Metamorph bosses drop an additional itemized sample, right? So instead of 1 with the Scarab, you're going to drop 2 itemized samples. And with this, you're going to drop 3. If you don't know what itemized samples are, it's basically these ones here. They have certain rewards, and you can kind of turn them in here in Tani's laboratory. Just so you know, though, I don't know 100% if these are actually worth it. I'll have to try it out. I have a huge sample size right now, as you can see right here. We're going to do that as soon as possible on stream, and we're going to share the results with you. But even if these are complete, utter trash, this strat still holds up. I have not taken anything like that into the account in terms of like currency or anything like that. Now we have some new nodes. Catalyzing fluids is completely new. This basically just makes it so you drop extra catalysts upon completing a Metamorph, depending on how many unique parts, rare parts you used. You want to use those anyways, so that is always a upside. Also, the Rogue Metamorphs is now 40% chance, which is pretty damn huge. Sometimes it doesn't drop anything. Sometimes it drops a lot. It is very RNG heavy, but overall for the minimal point investment, and for them usually not being as hard as normal Metamorphs, this is 100% worth it. Then we have a new addition, which is Imperfect Anatomy. Now, these points here are basically there to make Metamorphs easier. It reduces action speed, it reduces HP, and it reduces damage, which is actually huge. Last league, it was kind of risky to use Fine Specimen, even on good builds with all the Arch Nemesis mods. Giving Metamorphs 150% more life would be really rough to do. It might not even be worth the time. You're just going to be kiting around for 10 seconds. You could already be in your next map. This time it's a lot easier because of Imperfect Agony, which makes it so we can take Fine Specimen without too much hassle. Metamorphs in your maps have 150% more life. They deal more damage. And then you have the chance to double your rewards. Now, there's also the 3%ers here for a total of 39%. And just to point this out, this does not double whatever you drop. It just means it rolls twice for whatever reward you had. So if you don't, for example, get a Divine, you have a chance for a Divine on the second roll. But also if you drop a Divine, that does mean that it gets duplicated. And then we have some new nodes here, which are a little bit experimental. So just to be clear, these nodes alone are already worth it. These are a little bit weirder. We have Unethical Experiments. Metamorphs in your map grant 1,000% increased experience for 10% of that filled. I have definitely, before I have nothing, but there was a patch where Metamorphs got significantly increased XP. I can definitely see it. I sometimes even got 1% on level 97 just from one Metamorph. Now that I'm 99, I don't really feel it that much anymore, but that's pretty understandable. You will feel this especially on Gem XP. Metamorphs in your maps have 0.5% chance to drop an additional Metamorph Scarab for each 10% of VAT filled, which your VAT should always be filled to 100%. So this is straight up a 5% chance on every single Metamorph to get a Metamorph Scarab, which could be a Gilded one. You're obviously never sustaining because you don't want to use the Rusteds, you don't want to use the Polished, but it's still good to sell because a lot of people need any Scarabs, even if they're not using it because of Growing Hordes. So no matter what you might think about these, which we're going to talk about now, pathing here is always worth it because of the Scarab rewards that you get. However, this node here is a little bit weird. So the node starts out with Metamorphs in your maps have a random modifier to dropped items. I had some theories on what this means. All have been debunked. At this point, I'm not going to say anything about it. I have no freaking clue. I also searched it. I'm not sure if you know what this means. Like, definitely. Please put it down in the comments. I still have no idea. It gives you increased quantity of items dropped by Metamorphs in your maps for each monster modifier and then also rarity. Now, the thing about this is the quantity does obviously not scale the rewards. Otherwise, it would be completely nuts. It only scales the base monster. Now, I have felt a little bit more map sustain from Metamorphs. However, that might just be the leak, so I don't really know if it's this node or not. It is just 3 points. So I was like, I'm just going to take it. Just straight up, I'm not sure if these are worth it, but all the other ones are awesome. As for what your rewards are for Metamorph, obviously everybody knows about the Catalyst, but there's a lot more to it. You get quite a bit of Scarabs. In fact, I think most of the Scarabs that I have here were from Metamorph alone, and then a few one obviously from Altars. Now, the other thing that you get quite a bit of are stacked decks. Now, the thing is, with Chaos being kind of down in the gutter this league, stacked decks are definitely not. When they're usually 1-to-1 with Chaos, this league they're more like 2.5. So stacked decks are incredibly safe right now. As you can see, if you put them all together, we probably dropped around about 1,000, which is why I would definitely prioritize, for example, divination card rewards. We're going to talk about more of that in the map showcase. And then the organs, there's obviously a lot more small stuff dropping, right? There's like certain fracture bases dropping. There is certain temple mods dropping. If you know about rares, that's all going to be fine. But realistically, that's what you're going to get. So about the organs, we're going to talk about this in a separate video. At this point, I have no data whether these are actually worth picking up. You just get a ton, so I thought it would be fun to make a video. We're going to find that out. You can definitely hide them from your filter if you don't want to do them. That's for another video. Let's move on. Now then, let's talk about essences. I don't think at this point a lot needs to be said about it. Essences are just an absolute staple. You know the nodes. They're being used every single league the same. I guess one small tidbit I would say about essences is I actually ended up not taking Remnant of Corruption essence chance. Now, I am using currently the Compass, which you don't have to use, but what the Compass already does is it has 50% chance that your essence has a remnant, which means you then cannot corrupt it again, meaning you will overall get less of these essences of insanity. So as you will see here, I have a ton of normal shrieking essences. If I like probably 200 of each if I converted the Screamings. but in total, you don't get as many Essence of Horror, Insanity, and so on. On the contrary, you do get quite a bit of Remnants of Corruptions. If you're looking here in bulk, these sell quite well. They're almost 2C each in bulk. So you're looking here at 1,700 chaos just in Remnants drop. So obviously that's kind of a trade-off. I just felt like these nodes are not really well invested here, but that will completely depend on the meta. Just my choice. And essences are also not very complicated in terms of what they give. They straight up give essences. Now, when it comes to essences, what you want to corrupt are these right here. Scorn, Envy, Misery, Dread. If you corrupt these at any tier, you have a chance to get Insanity, Horror, Delirium. Some of these trade for, I think, around about 30 to 40 chaos. Yeah, 35. Some of them are like 30. So that is very worthwhile. So it is worthwhile to have like a stack of Remnants of Corruption on the side. And if you're doing the Compass, you're definitely going to sustain Remnants. If you're not running the Compass, you might actually think about taking these two nodes. When it comes to what to upgrade, this is not financial advice. Obviously, completely depends on when you're watching this. In terms of greeds, I would not really touch these. A lot of people are using Screaming and Shrieking to make sort of like fractured bases with decent life for like mid-tier gear, and they're making pretty good bank off of it. So greeds, I wouldn't really upgrade. Either Screaming or Shrieking, leave these be completely. In here, there's a lot of like ifs and buts, but usually you can upgrade these at least to Shrieking, most of them to Deafening. When it comes to Loathing, you don't really want to upgrade. I feel like right now Shrieking sell better than Deafenings, but you can upgrade basically all of these from Screaming. And then you never want to upgrade Dread, and the reason for that is that it gives +2 level of socketed bow gems, which is what it's used for mostly, and the Deafening doesn't upgrade that. It's still just +2. So upgrading from Screaming is basically always safe other than Greed, and upgrading from Shrieking to Deafening, you have to look at Greed, you have to look at Loathing, maybe Zeal, and definitely never upgrade Dread. Then we have Altars. Now, Altars, there has been a lot of talk about Altars this patch. What is better? Blue, red. I would definitely check out Fire's new video where he talks about why blue Altars might actually be a lot better than you give it credit for. However, in this strat, there's a lot of reasons to still go for red. First up, the positioning. If we had to basically path all the way to blue, it would be very inconvenient. We would have to cut some nodes. But in general, the thing about this strat is you want to be quick. We don't do stuff like Expedition, Harvest, Legion, anything that makes your map longer, we don't want to do. So obviously, Searing Exarch fits better because the blue mobs take a lot longer to kind of pop up. And Searing Exarch mobs spawn immediately, but then on top of that, you get a lot more consistent currency. Now, over time, you won't have this hype moment with like dropping a Divine Shrine, but let's be real, a lot of people will never ever see that anyways. So you would rather, in the meantime, sell your Awakened Sextants and your Orb of Unmakings for Divines. If this was another strat, I could definitely see either, but yeah, if you still want to run it, knock yourself out. The only not obvious note here is Baptized by Fire. This basically just makes it so you get more invitations. So if you look at my invitation tab right here, I've farmed up quite a bit. That is because our maps are quite fast. We're not doing anything to make them longer. So that obviously means more completions. And this node here definitely helps. Now then, let's talk about Heist. I will say I started out the strat saying Heist, take it or leave it. I didn't really want to include it because I don't love selling contracts and I don't love selling blueprints, but it isn't really just about that, right? Like these contracts, I'm probably only going to sell Deception and the rest. Maybe I'm going to run at some point, or I'm just going to leave in my stash, whatever. But it is more about what happened while I was farming. There was a new patch out, and now Huck actually works with rogue gear. And I want to talk about that in a second and how you can gear your Huck. Until then, the percentage chance to get Smuggler's Caches got buffed quite a bit. I think we're at around about 60% chance to get a Smuggler's Cache every single map, and there's some new additions. So all these 4% chance maps are actually worth it. Now, you don't just have to think about the contracts and stuff like that. One thing that sells really well with a lot of people running blueprints is stuff like rogue markers. I quickly sorted these out. Now, I didn't do any Smuggler's Cache compasses. These are just natural drops. There's nothing forced here. And currently they're selling 78,000 for a divine. So I made like 3 divines off of just clicking off the chest, which you want to do anyways because it gives you a speed buff. Like I said, more on that in a second. But basically, yeah, that's just 3 divines on top of everything else. These are really, really quick to sell, at least versus something like blueprints or contracts. Now, when we look at other clusters, we can see the Huck cluster down here. We can see this cluster. I don't think Friends in High Places is really worth it. Now, I will say this, if you want to run the contracts yourself, I would go Friends in High Places for sure, but selling these to people who actually want to run it, sure, it would be more valuable for them, but there's no way you can like sort them out. It's going to take forever. I would definitely not take these. You just take the one node here for the 4% chance to get a Smuggler's Cache. However, if you want to run them yourself, definitely experiment with this node. It seems insane. And then we have No Honor Among Thieves, which is one of the new nodes. Now, Smuggler's Caches in your maps have increased chance to contain blueprints for each Smuggler's Cache opened this map. This league, you actually have a chance to get more than one Smuggler's Cache quite easily. So your maps that contain Smuggler's Caches have a 10% chance to contain an additional one, which are the small nodes here, for a total of 30%. And then on top of that, you also have your maps that contain caches have a 5% chance to get an extra 6 one. So you can stack this up pretty quickly and get a lot more blueprints, get a lot more markers, stuff like that. You also have this other node here, which is casing the joint. And I quickly want to talk about this because a lot of people do this wrong. They sell their blueprints for too little because they are not looking at this, especially if your filter doesn't show. Smuggler's Caches in your maps have 100% increased chance to drop blueprints. Nice. Blueprints that drop in your maps have 10% chance to be fully revealed. Quickly, a way to search for this is basically this is about wings revealed on your blueprints, which will save whoever buys these a ton of rogue markers. And these are worth considerably more. So if you look at a blueprint right here, it says wings revealed 3 out of 3 or wings revealed 4 out of 4. Now, a normal blueprint does not say that. A normal blueprint has 1 wings revealed. Now, if there's a better way to search for these, definitely tell me down in the comments. But what I just do is I do 3 out of 3 right here, and then you can see them light up. And if I do 4 out of 4, it will light up right here. So let's see if I maybe missed one myself in the newest one. 4 out of 4. Yeah, there's one that I missed. There's one that I missed. These are worth considerably more. And then let's do the same with 3 out of 3. I think the old ones I already did. Yeah, from here on out. I missed one here, missed one here. Like, whoever's buying these in bulk will have a field day if you just give it to them for free. You can sell these for considerably more and even type that in the Heist filter on the PoE Trade website. Now, when it comes to Heist, most of your money will come from stuff like contracts. For example, Deception right now sells pretty damn well. So all these Deception contracts you can sell quite easily on TFT. Blueprints you can even sell without TFT, but when it comes to contracts, I would really consider that. Right now, we can't really filter out bad contracts, so that just makes it kind of awkward. You'll have to take a little bit of time to vendor the bad ones. Or maybe you have like a friend who runs some of the non-meta ones and you sell it like an inventory for 60C or something. Something like lockpicks can also sell. The blueprints basically also. Also, a little trick right here is that definitely get yourself a trinket because trinkets can affect your maps. So you see right here that Smuggler's Caches have 10% chance to duplicate contained rogue markers, which also works for your maps. This is not a super big deal, right? It's probably going to give you like 100 over a long farming session. It's going to give you an extra like 80 to 100 chaos in rogue markers. But in the end, why not? Also, you can put an incubator right here. So if you farmed Legion before, that's also a cool thing to know. Now, let's next go over Huck. There's a certain node right here that says Huck accompanies you on opening the first Smuggler's Cache in each of your map. If you're not doing Heist a lot, Huck is this dude right here. Now, when the league was revealed and everybody saw this node, everybody was pretty hyped because Huck gives buffs, but it did not work. However, in a recent patch, this got fixed. So now Huck does give a certain speed buff at first, and then you can also get some extra buffs from his equipment. Now, if you're in the Rogue Harbor right here, you go to V, you go to Huck, you can see his equipment right here. Now, the only equipment that matters is the arrowhead right here. If you want to know exactly which mods you can get at which level, item level, etc. On these, you can look at Craft of Exile. It has a section for this. However, the only thing I want to quickly show you is that these are the interesting things that Huck can give you for mapping. It can give you Grace, Haste, Hatred, Purity of Ice, and increased flash charges gained. I think Hatred and Purity of Ice are not that interesting because if you need them, you're going to have them anyways. You're not going to rely on Mr. Huck. But Grace and Haste are definitely interesting. With Haste being the standout, I think you can have both Haste and increased flash charges gained. So that would be pretty huge. I don't have that right now because I think you need a higher item level for a tier 1 flash charges gained roll. Pretty sure, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm not the biggest heister, but you need exactly a fragmenting arrowhead, and I think it has to be at least item level 75. And the reason for this is that it only requires level 3, which is the maximum that Huck can naturally go to. I will just say this right now. We tried it with a level 4 because we have +1 to all jobs for heists, but it does not work in maps. It does not accept the buff right here. If you could make it work, please tell me down in the description how to. We tried this out on stream for like an hour, but it does not work with +1 to job levels. So what you have to do is you level your Huck. It takes like 3 contracts to level 3, you get a fragmenting arrowhead. You just get a white one. You don't need a roll one. These are quite easy to roll yourself with alterations being so cheap. And then voila, whenever you're in maps and you open a smuggler's cache, you're just going to press it and you're going to get a speed buff, making this very much like the Gull Shrine interaction that people used to love so much. Now then let's quickly talk about the map choice and how we sustain maps. As you can see right here, we are using all the shaping nodes here and here. We're not going to shaping the skies, so that kind of helps, but we're not going singular focus. One thing I would definitely not do this patch is go singular focus. Maps sell incredibly well because people are forcing Sanctums, meaning they buy up a lot of cheap maps and they just rush to the Sanctum so they can do as many as possible, get some juicy relics and stuff like that. So singular focus will be always a net minus. I don't really know at which strat I would actually take this. I think it's overall just a pretty bad decision. When it comes to these nodes up here, these are the most questionable ones. I think I got around about 4 extra synthesis maps, so I'm not really sure if they're worth it. You could also just take the map modifier nodes here. However, with Metamorphs, these are pretty damn dangerous. If you have like 0% recovery or something, that could be quite rough. So I would definitely go for a map that at least has 2 bosses. This is, even if the organs suck, this is still important because you get overall better rewards from unique mobs, and you also get some extra bonuses depending on if you used unique mobs. So I would definitely go for your main map as a 2 boss map, which Coves is. Other than that, there's not really much to it. So what we do is we ping pong between atolls and coves. They're actually next to each other, which means that whenever you run atolls, you're going to get a ton of coves. So coves is your GG map, but atoll is super fun to run, right? It only has 1 boss, but it's only for so long. It's only basically there to farm coves. It's still worth putting your Gilded Metamorph Scarabs in there. As for what we do here is we do 11 favorite coves and then 1 favorite atoll. This is basically just that whenever you kill the map boss here, you have a chance to drop 1 map next to it. You would rather that have to be atoll most of the time. For this strat to work in exactly these maps, you need at least 3 watchstones, so your coves can be still tier 14 and your atoll can still be tier 15. However, 4 is recommended because it also gives you extra maps which sell really well right now. Now, how do we run our maps? So what we have is we, for example, run a coves. We alk it. We already have it chiseled for 20%. And then you just go with whatever. This is fine for me. Now, what do we use otherwise? I'm using 1 compass, and that is the Sextant compass. This compass is incredibly good. You, at current prices, get like an extra essence per map for like 3 chaos, which is 100% worth it. As for the 16 use one, they're a lot more expensive. They give 2 extra essences. At that point, I'm not really sure. That will completely depend on the meta, but they're so rare that I usually don't try to incorporate them. They're a annoyance to buy. As for scarabs, like I said, you need the Gilded Metamorph Scarab. You don't need the compass if you don't want to. You don't need a cartography scarab. I just have it in there for a little bit of extra map selling. But the Gilded Metamorph Scarab is kind of mandatory. Otherwise, the whole strat kind of falls apart. Then we basically just go to the map device here. We put our scarabs in. My sextant is already applied right here. Get some portal scrolls real quickly. And we don't use anything fancy here. We don't want to spend any extra currency. We're going through so many maps that spending anything here would just not be worth it. We're going for Zeroing Exarch. You can obviously go for something else. We put it in and we open it. So yeah, like I said, it's about completing the map as fast as possible. This strat is also quite good for Forbidden Sanctum. It's obviously not as good as people who are just rushing there, but it's quite close. Everything you do doesn't really take that much time other than maybe the Metamorph at the end, but it's definitely worth it. Now, when you get into Coves, you definitely want to look at going for Smuggler's Caches first, especially if you have the Huck with the haste buff, right? So you want to go to the side first. You don't have to rush to the boss. There's no like go boss first or whatever. It doesn't matter. Just find the Smuggler's Cache first. If you don't see it, it's not that big of a deal. But in this case, we did. So we're just going to go over there real quick. We're going to drop the essence. We're going to click the Smuggler's Cache. And as you can see right here, we just got a buff up here. Did we get a buff? Yeah, there it is. Combat ready. You deal increased damage, have increased attack, cast, and movement speed. That's huge, right? I don't think it stacks Yeah, it doesn't stack, definitely. And it also gives us haste, as you can see right here. So that's really, really cool. It's going to make it a lot faster. When it comes to altars, I usually pick mob rewards. I'll be honest, though, I don't really look at them. If I do longer farming sessions, I don't really want to think all the time. I just want to turn my brain off, have fun slaying monsters. If you're somebody who wants to min-max that more, sure, go for it. But on the that's one of the good things about Red Influence, that you don't really have to do that, right? So you just circle around and you kill all the Metamorph mobs. Now, the Metamorphs here on the map will make it very nice for you to see where all the mobs are, especially in a not obvious map like Coves. I think Coves are always still pretty nice. Let's just do this real quick. But as you see, the map speed is quite fast. Coves is not that big of a map, so you just pick random extra mobs. This is definitely not one of those strats that completely focuses on altars at all. We dropped the second essence right here. Some good monies. We got an atoll, which is one of the maps that we can run. And now we get to the Metamorph. All right, so let's quickly talk about what you choose here, because that is quite important to your success. Now, the most important thing here is that you actually have two unique pieces here, because we have two bosses in Coves, but you don't want them both in one Metamorph. You want them spread over both, right? So on the first use, we want one unique, and then we will have one left for the second use. Now, as for what rewards to choose, I made a little bit of a tier list here. At number 1, there's obviously Scarabs. You could argue the Catalyst is better than Rusted Scarabs. It actually tells you whenever you hover over. But in my opinion, it's not important enough to hover over and read every single time. So just take Scarabs, Catalyst, and maps. You can also get Influence maps. It's not as good as you think it is, because it can also drop like less than T14. It doesn't respect your Atlas exactly. So that's a little awkward. But obviously for selling maps, it's still great. Diff cards, mostly for stacked decks, although you will get the occasional crazy drop. Obviously, when it comes to fossils, these are just very consistent, like consistently 2, 3, 4 chaos. Sometimes you get a perfect fossil, sometimes you get the speed fossil. Now, Harbinger, sometimes you get an ancient orbs. It's kind of hit or miss. This is definitely lower tier Harbinger currency, but you're gonna have to pick them sometimes. And then there's everything else. We know exactly what I'm talking about. The good old rare rewards, whether it's jewelry, armor, or weapons. But I don't want to make this too much of a science. Whenever I come in, I basically just start from the top. Now, these small boxes here, just so you know, they can be anything. So you have to kind of hover over them if you want to. I usually take them if there's nothing else. So for example, here, I know I'm going to take this unique, and then I'm not going to take the second one because I'm going to wait for a second one. I just go boom, 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 and then currency, because these two are obviously insane rewards. So let's do it real quick. Now, I hope I didn't pick anything bad. Usually, I don't really read because this character is very, very good at doing them. As you can see here, these two prismatic catalysts right now, alone, I think, go for like 7 C each. Or, yeah, actually 10 C each. So with these two catalysts alone, we made like 20 C back. The Scarab at this point costs like 6, 7 chaos. So yeah. Also, one thing you should probably think about is unhiding all your catalysts, because you can actually vendor them, a vendor recipe 3-to-1. So you definitely want to unhide them all if you have them hidden on your filter. Now, for the second one, Fragment is like, okay, I didn't even put it in the tier list because I feel like they changed this to where you can't really get good fragments anymore. Just make sure you have the second one. As you can see here, we got 3 itemized samples, and on the second one, we're going to get another 3. Also, something you have to know is that Rogue Metamorphs can also drop these. We didn't see one this map, but you will definitely see him. It has the same icon as the Metamorph right here had. Now, what a lot of people don't talk about is the builds that you actually need to do these strats, so we're going to go over it in a second. So Metamorph is notorious for being hard. However, that kind of changed this patch with the Arch Nemesis rework. By no means are they easy, but they are doable. Now, you have to be decently tanky. These guys do so much damage. The number one thing is you need Soul of Aberrath. Even if you were blue influence and you didn't care about the Searing Exarch Burning Grounds, Metamorph Burning Grounds are next level. They do like 3 times, 4 times the damage. If you thought Searing Exarch is rough on Burning Ground, Metamorphs have some nasty Burning Grounds. Basically, every second or third one has one. So you want the upgraded, unaffected by Burning Ground before you even start. You have to be decently tanky. You don't want to get one-shots. These things are pretty rough to do. Obviously, you couldn't see it in the map showcase because my character is pretty geared out. But you got to be decently tanky. Also, you got to have good single target damage. And I want to quickly talk about the nodes right here. I actually wasn't using Fine Specimen on my first character whenever I did this because it was not ready to do Metamorphs with this much of an increase, right? 150% more life. That's a more multiplier on top of everything that the other map mods already give. and they also deal 15% more damage. Once again, you do get the 30% chance for rewards to be doubled, but if the Metamorphs now all of a sudden take like a minute to do, this is definitely not worth it. So experiment around before you start investing into the strat. Imperfect anatomy is always worth it. Making Metamorphs easier, always worth it. You don't have to spec this node in particular. I would always spec the small ones anyways, because that's just flat chance without any downside. But you can not go find Specimen and the strat is still going to be fine. Although to get the full potential, you will have to have your character to where you can actually run this. And then you also want to have a fast character if possible, because obviously the faster you complete the map, the more free essences, the more free Metamorphs you get. Although Huck, like I said, carries, definitely look at the Heist part again, where I talk about how to gear him. He gives you a speed buff, and he also gives you haste. Now, in terms of the itemized samples, are these actually good? So one thing I want to point out is they actually got buffed this patch. There's a new line here that a lot of people didn't see. Itemized samples found in your maps have an additional reward. This doesn't sound that great, right? But on average, these itemized samples probably had like 2 to 3 rewards. That was like the average. So if we said it was like 2.5 and we get 1 additional on average, that goes from 2.5 to 3.5, which is something around about 40% more loot. So in general, it should be good, but we don't know. I have a ton here, and we're going to do this over on stream on twitch.tv/Palsteron. So whenever you're watching this, my video on this might already be out. I'm going to link it down in the description. Definitely watch out for that. If you don't want to engage with this at all, I'm going to talk about Tane, the laboratory, all of that in that next video. But yeah, that's basically the strat. We're going to liquidate all of this soon on stream. Like I said, I'm pretty interested in how good these itemized samples are actually going to be, especially because they're now a lot less tanky, so you can basically one-shot them. But yeah, hopefully you learned a thing or two, and see you around. But that's it for the video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe. As always, a huge shout out to my Twitch subscribers and my Patreons. I couldn't do videos like this without you. Thank you so much for the support. And yeah, this character was a lot of fun. By the way, if you want to know the character, I made a video about this. I'll link it down in the description. A lot of fun with this farming strat. Always love doing Metamorphs. Now it's time to do a full, like, this is probably going to take like 4 to 5 hours to do all of these. They're actually quicker than you think they are. And then it's off to selling and maybe a next build coming soon. Who knows? With that being said, since I still don't have a slogan, see you next time.